It's on 34 minutes off the top of the hour. Thank you for staying with us for the news review. We're joined by political scientist, director of the Center for European Studies at the University of Ghana. I'm talking about Dr. Kwame Asante. Doc? Okay. So right before we get to Dr. Kwame Asante, he'll be joining us shortly. The news review on the AM show is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic. Free prostate screening and free female fertility screening are to be delivered, and the locations are Accra, Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard, Kumasi, Kronum, Abuehia behind Angel Educational Complex, Takrade in Anaji Estates in Tema Community 22 to be specific, in Techiman Hanswa, and Isiama in Zema. You can call them or 0244 867 068 or 0742 234 321. That is 0274 234 321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. And that is Endpoint. They are making it possible for us to bring you the AM show this morning. We'll be joined by Dr. Kwame Asante shortly, but let's see what the papers have for us this morning. Starting with the Daily Graphic newspaper, rent support scheme launched, that's according to Vice President Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, and this is an interesting one. We flip-flopped, dilly-dallied, vacillated, done everything when it comes to rent issues. And when you go out there and speak to the ordinary Joe, they'll tell you about the crisis of renting, especially noting that rent, the cost of living, and especially rent, is one of the highest anywhere you would go in Africa and even across the world. When Michael Blackson, the American comedian, the American Ghanaian comedian came to Ghana, he made mention of the fact that he was shocked to the bone, basically, at the cost of property in Ghana and what that could do in the United States. So with all of this, it's very difficult to acquire property, very difficult to acquire land, and even if you get land, there's a whole lot of, it's a complicated mess. I know someone currently in Ibri who has had to lodge a police complaint over a similar issue. With all of these dynamics and, landlords and landladies insisting that people pay for 2 years, in some instances, if it's a shop, 5 to 10 years, how really can we sanitize the system? Rent control, I don't see what they're doing. I'm sorry. And there are so many dynamics at play and people are bleeding. So this, I'll take it with a pinch of salt and see what comes out of it. But I'll bring you details of that story on page 16 of the paper. Domestic debt exchange program. Individual bondholders get revised offer and the deadline has been extended. The 75% TVET curricula outdated. That's according to a study. And it appears the Education Ministry has a whole lot of work to do. Recently we had, and we still have, Ghana schools of shame. Shame on us, all of us, for what we allow our children to go through. When they're crawling on the floor like lizards to study, how do we expect them to match up with those in other jurisdictions? And I'm not even talking about the West. Right here in Africa, how can we do that to our children? Are these the leaders we would want to see tomorrow? What kind of leadership would they be able to deliver with that kind of background? So we have a whole lot to do. Registrar General strikes out defaulting business names. That story on page 20 of the paper. Let me say a very good morning to Dr. Kwame Asante. Doc, thank you for joining the conversation.
Good morning, Ben.
It's really good to have you. I hope you woke up on the right side of your bed this morning.
Yes.
Great to hear. Great to hear. Well, I started with a few headlines, and I'm going to get into the stories now. Starting with 75% TVET curricula outdated according to a study. So according to this study, 75% of the curricula of technical and vocational education and training institutions is outdated. A skills gap analysis between 2018 and 2022 has revealed. The analysis, which was matched with an audit of 10 economic sectors, showed that within the period, there was also an ineffective mode of teaching at the various TVET institutions, which adversely impacted the productivity levels of graduates from those schools on the job market. The Director General of the Commission of TVET, that is the CTVET, Dr. Fred Che Asamoah, disclosed this at a media briefing on the first 5-year strategic plan, that is 2018 to 2022, for transforming TVET in the country. The plan is also expected to establish strong links between industry and TVET providers or academia. The analysis was to address issues of skills mismatch between training institutions and industry. Now to you, Doc, you're an academic. Looking at our technical, vocational education and training, I always go back to the likes of Switzerland and Germany. Their economies are basically held by these, the French would call them the Polytechnique, those institutions, technical institutions that have built their countries. In Switzerland, you can get a mechanic, but the quality of the mechanic, you can't, downgrade him in any way or denigrate him compared to a heart surgeon because he's a surgeon for a car. I look at our own system and the many gaps in here and the flip-flopping, the curricula not adequate, the end result not adequate. What do you make of the situation, Doc?
The only thing that comes to mind when you look at this thing is that we are not serious as a people. I want to be brutally frank about this because this is a very important concept that if you look at the idea way back from Kwame Nkrumah's era, where he built a lot of schools, including technical and secondary technical school, which I'm a product of, already as a tech, all right? It's just to ensure that they provide the necessary support for economic takeoff and all that. We have abandoned this. How can you sit down for the curricula to be outdated? Is it the case that there's no monitoring? Who is monitoring who? Do they go for, approval or updates or accreditation for that matter? Yeah, it's an indictment on a whole chain of officers who are in command, whose duty it is to ensure that these things get fixed. It is unfortunate, but it's not too late because if we want to salvage the situation, we'll be able to do it. We need to put our acts together and make sure that we strengthen these institutions. Anywhere there are missing links, we try to provide the missing links and then let it work. It is doable. We can learn from best practices, and it's all over, and it is not out of our reach to be able to get this thing and then support this beautiful academic enterprise. This is the game changer. If you look at Professor, Boateng from Boateng, he has always been hammering on things like that. Professor Subote and the rest of them. So I believe that the time is now for us to reflect on all these things and then work to ensure that it succeeds. It's for our own benefit.
And even just to stay a little on that subject, even where we have the requisite skills, we talk about unemployment all the time, but there's also something called underemployment. So sometimes you have people with the skills, but there's a mismatch. So you have someone who has studied accounting to a high level, let's say tertiary level and beyond, yet the person can't secure a job related to his or her field, and so ends up, let's say, as a driver. And this is not to denigrate any job. But if you look at the skill the person has and what that person can contribute to our economy and what the person is doing, that is underemployment. And we have a lot of that as well in the system because we don't know, for example, if you went to any institution in this country now and asked, let's say trades and industry, labor and employment, how many accountants is Ghana going to need in the next or in the course of this year to meet our accounting needs? How many engineers are we going to need? How many of this and that? You would not get any answers because we simply do not know. And that is a part of the problem.
Yeah, data. Data is a problem. And we are not ready. I see, Ben, if we are a people who are ready to get these things fixed, we'll be able to fix them because there are experts around here, right in Ghana, who can assist us. There are, better examples or best practices elsewhere we can borrow from. Except that, yes, we talk about it a little, and then we forgot to go to sleep. And the next time, the problem resurfaces. I think it doesn't do anybody good at all.
Let's get into some other stories and wrap with the Daily Graphic. Domestic debt exchange program, individual bondholders get revised offer. Deadline extended. And there's also that story, rent support scheme launched. Both of those stories on page 16. Let's take a quick look at them. So the government has agreed to offer all individual bondholders who are below the age of 59 new bonds with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of the initial 15 years. It will also offer a coupon, that is interest rate of 10% for that category of bondholders should they decide to tender them for new ones. Similarly, All retirees, including those who will be retiring this year, will be offered bond instruments with a maximum maturity of 5 years instead of 15 years and a 15% coupon rate. The revised positions were contained in a statement the Ministry of Finance issued in Accra yesterday. Now, in terms of the deadline extension, in view of the new development, the government has for the fourth time extended the deadline for the voluntary participation in the domestic debt exchange program by 7 days from yesterday, Tuesday, Tuesday. So yesterday was actually Tuesday, and it's been moved to next Tuesday, February the 7th. So a week's difference. The extended deadline also comes with a revised and final exchange memorandum, which the statement said would be released by tomorrow. For those who would voluntarily tender their bonds for new ones, a new settlement date of Tuesday, February 14 this year had been set, which would be confirmed via the new exchange memorandum, the statement indicated. So that's it with the debt exchange program. But quickly to the rent support scheme. A financial support scheme to cushion Ghanaians to meet their rent demands has been launched in Accra, known as the National Rental Assistance Scheme. The intervention is expected to provide low-interest loans for qualified applicants to enable them to pay their rent advance. And the Vice President, Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, who launched the scheme in Accra yesterday, said the government had set aside 30 million Ghana cedis as seed money towards the implementation of the scheme. He said the scheme would be rolled out initially in the Greater Accra, Ashanti, Western, Eastern, Northern, and Bono East regions. He said the scheme would enable Ghanaians with identifiable and regular income to apply, and when approved, the rent would be paid directly to their landlords, who would also be required to register with the scheme. Not a bad start, but I asked myself, have we done due diligence fully, properly? 30 million Ghana cedis. Are we going to be able to track this properly and give value for money effectively and efficiently to Mother Ghana, to our citizens whose taxpayers are going to go into this enterprise? How are we going to ensure that this doesn't become another scheme for chop chop? Foot soldiers going to benefit rather than the generality of the masses without the mask of MPP or NDC. How are we going to do that? And again, is this not just going to be more talk, the talk shop? We've heard things, especially with the Vice President, talk about rents this and we'll do this and do that. Till today, none of that has seen the light of day. Any quick reactions, Doc?
I want to believe that they want to make sure that this beautiful policy gets started and started well. If you look at the MPP manifesto, this
We have a bit of a challenge with the connection to Dr. Asasante. We'll try to get him back and allow him to make his point there. In the interim, on page 17, talking politics, stop takeover of indigenous private banks, Ayariga to Bank of Ghana. And the National Democratic Congress Member of Parliament for Boku Central, Mahama Ayariga, has urged the Governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Ernest Anderson, to make concerted efforts to stop the possible collapse of the financial sector and the unjust takeover of indigenous private banks due to the implementation of the domestic debt exchange program. He says, quote, I call for the mobilization of the available intellectual competencies and political forces to defend the bona fide property rights of owners of private banks in Ghana. There's also prioritized economic recovery over cathedral, and the Great Consolidated Popular Party has called on President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo to make the recovery of the national economy a priority over the construction of the national cathedral. The leader of the party, Dr. Henry Herbert Latte, who made the call during an exclusive interview with the Daily Graphic, also implored the president to refrain from using any state resources or financial support from the IMF to support the construction of the National Cathedral. Dr. Latte opined that resorting to the IMF to bail Ghana with $3 billion to address the challenges confronting the national economy was critical. Hence, the need for the president to refrain from using any amount of the loan to support the construction of the National Cathedral. He's made a very valid point, and I support this point wholeheartedly. The only issue is, will the powers that be heed his call? Only time will tell, assuming we get the deal. On the pack page, NDA CEO, 3 others granted 2 million Ghana cedi bail, and the Office of the Special Prosecutor has arraigned the CEO of the Northern Development Authority, Sumaila Abdulrahman, his 2 deputies and a businessman before the Tamale High Court for allegedly bloating a contract sum from 5.72 million to 10.4 million. And so they've landed in some hot water there. If you followed that story, you would notice this development. And a lot of such, I followed the story up to the point of the OSP getting into the matter and the different dynamics and how they claimed they didn't even know how the figure of 10.4 million, which they had signed to, came to bear. There's too much corruption in Ghana. Far too much. And our leaders, government in, government out, it's all talk shop. And we fall for them, Ghana for. Let's open our eyes. These leaders, a lot of them, people will say, oh, but the MDA CEO and all of that is not. It's very reflective of our system from head to toe, from the very top to the very bottom. And some exposés in the past have even pointed to the very height of our leadership in this country. So what are we doing about it? And yet we are surprised, we act surprised that we find ourselves where we do when it comes to the Corruption Perception Index. Last year, that drive by the Ghana Statistical Service revealed that moving away from perception, the reality is even more stark. So where do we go from here? And maybe, how much are we, you and I, how much are we contributing to that problem? That's something else we all ought to assess. The technocrats are even worse than some of these politicians. It is indeed a sad development. But I'll go back to Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, who joins the conversation once more, just leaving you with Ghana School of Law inducts 700 students, and there was a call on them to uphold the ethical values of the school and let them guide their path in the legal profession. Usually, legal education in the country would get me talking, but this morning I think I'll just stay away from that for today. Doc, welcome back. You had two stories to reflect on: the bondholder revised offer and the rent support scheme. Quickly on that, please.
On the rent support scheme, I think it's a beautiful scheme, but that the authorities need to be able to figure out the real challenges that confront such projects, some of which you have alluded to already, so that they can look at them and then make sure that we don't start such a beautiful program and ends not successful. All right. Time again, we have seen such beautiful projects that at the end of the day, we throw in money and we don't get value for money. All these things must be fixed. And then tied to this is the issue of the law on rent. Advance payment where people charge more than what the law expects. All right, that you can take more than 6 months of rent advance, where people take 1 year, must be looked at so that it gives this project the foundation that it deserves.
Right.
There's no doubt that it's a beautiful project and it's part of the MPP manifesto promise, but we want to make sure that we get value for money. That's the way to go.
That's the way to go. Let's quickly get into the Ghanaian Times newspaper now. Domestic debt exchange program deadline extended to February 7. We've taken a look at that story. GRA arrests 3 over non-compliance to electronic VAT system. We'll be getting into that. Efia, I always struggle with, because I would like to pronounce it the way the Germans would do, Schwarzenegger, fined 60,000 Ghana cedis for contempt of court. And there's also government launches 30 million Ghana cedi nationwide rental scheme to increase access to safe, secure, affordable rental scheme. Both of these stories we've done. But let's take a look at the GRA. Some arrests have been made in recent times, and looks like they're going hard on those not in compliance, which is a good thing. 3 persons have been arrested by a task force of the Ghana Revenue Authority for non-compliance to the electronic value-added tax system. They include 2 foreign nationals who are the managers of Palace Shopping Mall at Community 25 in Tema and Maxmart East Legon branch, and a Ghanaian who is a senior official at Second Cup Coffee Shop at Jolu in Accra. The officials, whose names were not disclosed, were arrested after disregarding an initial caution by the GRA on the issuance of EVAT invoices and other illegal practices to evade taxes. The 3 persons were sent to the headquarters of the GRA for their statements before they were handed over to the Criminal Investigation Department of the police. The initiative is part of an ongoing nationwide VAT invigilation exercise to ensure tax compliance and retrieve taxes due the state. There's also Israeli ambassador calls for promotion of worldwide peace. I'm talking about Shlomit Sufa. And she yesterday called on the local and international communities to work together to promote peaceful coexistence. It's timely, she says this, especially on the back of recent developments between the Palestinians and the Israelis, and some suicide, some bombings, so to speak. The latest I recall is a 13-year-old who allegedly, with some help, killed about some 7 Israelis, and the back and forth, in that region. Any quick thoughts on that? The GRA?
Yeah. If you look at the GRA story, I am in firm support of what the GRA is doing.
Right.
Because all the states are required to be able to generate the needed resources to run its own affairs. That is what we call in political science the extractive capacity of the state. And the state is gone. And we, all of us, must support the GRA to be able to make sure after we raise the revenue, we ensure value for money. But if people want to run away from their responsibility of paying taxes, that is a problem. That culture must continue to be, we must give education to that so that people know that it is their duty to pay taxes and ensure that government business runs and for the benefit of everybody. Once you shy away from this, then you are likely to undermine the business of government. And you, the very person who want to come around and then criticize government for non-performance. I think it's unfortunate. So I support the GRA. Everybody, every Tom, Dick, and Harry in this country who is legally employed and then who owes a duty to pay taxes must do so that we save our country a lot of borrowing, a lot of expenditure and all that. But we want to send a note to all our officials that money that they collect, let them apply them judiciously so that at the end of the day, it doesn't become something that affects people's psyche, that yes, when I pay the money, it will not be put into good use. I believe that authorities will ensure value for money.
Well, on the back page, we'll create opportunities for young girls through golf. And the president of the Captain One Golf Society, Mr. Pius Apia, has expressed the society's commitment to use golf to rid the streets. The Ghanaian Times says raid, but we all know better. To rid the streets of underprivileged kids and guide them to make a life out of the sport. Mr. Apia said this on Saturday after receiving a special award on behalf of the society at the 47th Sports Writers Association of Ghana Awards. And can Legon cities upset hearts? That's a story there, a question posed on the back page of the Ghanaian Times newspaper. Which local team do you support when it comes to football, Doc?
Unfortunately, now I have no preference. I used to be with Accra House of Coke. Okay. But what I went through, I don't want a repeat of that. I am firmly glued to my national team, the Black Stars. Rain or shine, I'm with them. But sometimes I go to sleep early when they are playing football. I think with the new coaches the new coach that we are trying to employ, all these things will be a thing of the past. And then when they play, everybody will be happy and then we'll get the needed results.
Let's get into the Daily Guide newspaper. Baumia launches rent assistance scheme after forcing fights government over old fridges ban. Ghanaian earns PhD in Arabic studies, story on page 6, and 3 CEOs granted 2 million Ghana cedi bail. I'm talking about the NDA. Let's look at those 2 stories, the PhD holder later, but the Atuforsen story first. A newly appointed minority leader, Dr. Cassiel Atuforsen, stoked a controversy yesterday after posting a tweet to denigrate and quote disaffection for the government over a public notice on the enactment of new laws to regulate the markets for electrical appliances and renewable energy products. The Energy Commission had issued the notice to inform the public about the passage of a total of 19 regulations by Parliament last year, which regulations provide for a transitional period of 1 year for the market to adjust to ensure smooth implementation. Now, the new minority leader, bumbling over with, okay, so again, I think today I'm marking the newspapers. The Ghanaian Times said to raid the streets instead of rid the streets. And now I am seeing the new minority leader bumbling over, more like bubbling over with excitement to please his appointing authority. We ought to watch the English. People read this and take it for fact. Bubbling over with excitement to please his appointing authority, jumped on social media platforms to politicize the announcement, claiming that the government had banned the importation of used electrical appliances such as TV sets, computers, fridges, among others. He wrote, quote, "This is insensitive," before attaching a list of 20 items contained in the schedule of regulations 1, 2, and 7, which include air conditioners, comfort fans, computers, distribution transformers, electric kettle, electric motor, incandescent lamp, industrial fan, and inverters. The rest are television sets, refrigerating appliances, microwave ovens, monitors, metal halide lamps, rice cookers, washing machines, water heaters, ventilating fans, solar panels, and set-top boxes. That's the first story there, and the Daily Guide couching it as his being political. But let me add the story on page 6 about the PhD holder, and then we can have your reflections. Doc, Adam Umar Yabela has made history by becoming the first Ghanaian to receive a PhD in the teaching of Arabic to non-native speakers from the famous Islamic University of Medina in Saudi Arabia. The Ghanaian scholar is very respectful, friendly, hardworking, and accommodating. He displays impressive academic prowess during his PhD studies in the university to the admiration of his professors and supervisors. I mean, it goes on and on, but we salute Adam Umar Yabela for this feat. As a student of languages myself, French, Spanish, Portuguese, English in itself, it's no mean feat at all. We salute him. Quick reactions?
I think I also would join you and others who are celebrating him, that he's done so well. His effort is worth commending here. And we believe that this will serve as a shining example for many who want to venture into that area and study all this beautiful and important language. Arabic is a very useful and beautiful language, very, very important in this world of ours, that we need people to go in there and study and then teach others. So it has a lot of economic benefit, political benefit, and the rest of them. So I am emboldened by this to encourage others who want to follow the same path, that it's an important program that we should not shy away from. Our students at Legon, I encourage them to take this subject seriously. It is the way to go. One of the languages is enough to help you to move on in life and move into better places. It is important. All right.
Thank you. The final newspaper, and we'll be wrapping in 2 minutes. DDEP offers improved terms to individuals and those retiring this year. We've already looked at that story. 4 accused of inflating contract. That's the NDA story. We've also looked at Ayariga and 30 million for phase 1 of rent scheme. All of these stories already looked at. Let's wrap then. The Ghanaian publisher Otumfuo advises NPP flag bearer contestants. We know recently Alan Trebanting was at the Manchia Palace to interact with Otumfuo. Forestry Commission military turn attention on Etiwa, and recently we were told about some illegal mining activity going on there. Oh, Mother Ghana. When? Baumia hails rental assistance novelty. Obi Amwa defends court's role in democracy, and minority challenges ban on imported used electronic appliances. The New Crusading Guide, drama over NDA chop tango. And next NDC government will tweak the constitution, John Mahama confirms. Finally, the custodian newspaper, Tampuli, I'm talking about Hassan Tampuli, cut sought for 3.6 million Ghana cedi Gushegu Hospital Maternity and Surgical Ward. And Ikuapem South gets new district court. I'd like you to reflect as you leave us on this bit. Next NDC government will tweak the constitution, as John Mahama is said to have suggested. That's a story in the New Crusading Guide. Any thoughts on that? And for you, what aspects of the constitution, off the top of your head, do you think we should be tweaking?
Yes, I think the call is right and very much appropriate. because we have operated the Constitution for some time now. We have seen the benefits, the problems. One of the problems we have, I want to flag it up, is the issue of, it is something that I expect a bold politician to take it up, and then we'll place a cap on membership of the Supreme Court. Why am I saying that? There is always a problem where people criticize government that, yes, they keep on packing the courts and the rest of them. There are examples all over the world. If you look at a mighty America, it has only 9 judges who sit and all sit at a go. It takes away some of the problems that confront the judiciary as the bastion of the law, all right? So I think that going forward, if NDC is serious about tweaking the Constitution, it is one test that I want them to pass.
Right.
That place a cap so that it will save us a lot of resources, a lot of unnecessary criticisms that are leveled against the Supreme Court, and so that we'll have the apex courts very much at peace, and then they will be able to do their work as expected of them.
Doc, we're really grateful you took the time to join us this morning, and I still owe you a trip to see your fish farm.
Please come over. We'll enjoy.
Thank you so much, and have the best of the day. That is Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante, a lecturer of political science at the University of Ghana, also the head of the Center for European Studies. Before we wrap and get into sports, I would like to send shouts to Wallace Hudson in Tennessee in the United States. You've been in Ghana, you are back in the United States for a long time now. You always follow the AM show. We're grateful to you for that. Thanks so much for choosing us. Thank you for choosing me. And thanks for yesterday, for all your encouraging words and support. God richly bless you. That's to Wallace Hudson. The news review on the AM show is brought to you by Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, and they are offering free prostate screening and free female fertility screening. You can locate them in Accra at Spintex, opposite the Shell signboard, in Kumasi at Kronum Abuehia, behind Angel Educational Complex, in Takrade at Anaji Estates in Tema Community 2, in Techim and Hansua, and in Esiama and Zema. You can reach them on 0244-867-068 or 0274-234-321. Endpoint Homeopathic Clinic, the end to chronic disease. Well, also a happy birthday to Mrs. Joyce Buama Bua in Teshi Manette Estates. God bless you and your family as you celebrate another milestone. It's from Isaac Kofiaje here at Joy News. Also to Reverend Ignatius Kobina, General Overseer, City of Christ Church Worldwide, wishing you God's blessings and a fulfillment of your heart's desires. It's from Bernard Bludo and family. On that note, we settle for sports up next.